Boom, weight loss resolutions. So like I said, weight loss is easily the number one resolution that people make at the beginning of every year, right? So like this January, I'm gonna finally commit to eating less. I'm gonna finally commit to working out more. I'm gonna finally commit to being a healthier person and eating healthier and such. One of the big issues with people committing to weight loss is they don't know exactly what they're committing to, right? Weight loss is something that does not happen over the course of a day or a week or any short period of time, but it takes a month, it takes 2 months, it takes 4 months. It happens very slowly and gradually, at least if you're doing it a healthy way. And so, I mean, you can do those like really ridiculous like purge diets or cleansing things or whatever, and they're usually not very good for you. But what we're going to talk about today is a very healthy way to go about it, or at least what I interpret as the healthiest ways to go about losing weight with the new year. So I gotta click it, I guess. There we go. All right, so the main goals of today, or at least I should say the main goals of people who are making resolutions for 2018. Basically, lose fat, gain muscle, eat well, and keep it that way, right? We want to decrease the amount of fat that we're carrying on our body. We want to increase the amount of muscle because that is going to do a number of things for us, right? It's going to make us feel stronger. It's going to increase our resting metabolic rate. It's going to allow you to burn more calories per day just resting, which is really good. And then we want to keep it that way, right? So we don't want to have to make the same resolution every year. We don't want to lose weight for the first. So we want to keep it that way. So it's really easy for someone to say that I want to lose weight, I want to maintain this lifestyle, and then over the next 3 to 5 months they do well, they do really great, and they lose some weight, and then they say, okay, I've kind of made it to my goal, or I've made it close to my goal, and then it kind of peters out over the course of the year. And by the time you get back to November, December of the following year, you're right back to where you were when you started. And you may have even gained back some of the weight. You're falling back into the habits that got you there in the first place. Hey, what's up, Nick? How you doing, buddy? Thanks for that, host. So anyway, we're going to talk about some strategies that I think are a little bit more sustainable, and then some that are going to help you get to where you need to go. I will absolutely be playing games just a little bit later. Arm81, thank you for that follow, dude. What's going on? All right, so weight loss is a very simple equation, right? A lot of people like to muddy it all up with this and that, but in the end, it's a very simple thermodynamic equation. We want energy in to be less than energy out. So right here it says energy in is equal to energy out, and that's if you want to maintain your weight exactly what it is. But if you want to lose weight, you want to burn more energy than you are consuming. Now, when I say energy, I am also referring to the term calories, which I'm sure many people are familiar with. What's up, Texan? And so this is just kind of a simple graphic that I found, that you want your energy in, your foods, your fishes, your breads, your tomatoes, whatever. You want your calories in to be less than your calories out. You want the amount of activity you're doing and the amount of stuff that you're burning to outweigh the amount that you're consuming. And then by the nature of thermodynamics, you will then lose weight. It's not a you will probably lose weight. It's not a then maybe. You will lose weight if you are burning more calories than you are consuming, because your body is a closed system, and if you release more energy than you consume, then you are decreasing the amount of total energy within your body, and you will lose weight. So, science. All right, so how do we get there? So, we get there by a couple of main strategies. Number one is increasing is completing activity or physical activity, exercise and movement. We'll talk about that. And then eating habits. So how do we change kind of our standard eating habits? How do we change how we go about every meal that we approach? And then what are some specific diet strategies that we can use in order to maybe enhance the way that our bodies are taking in energy? But one thing that you're going to hear me repeat multiple times throughout the day, or multiple times throughout this talk, is that the best plan available to anyone is one that they can stick to. Now, a lot of people say, what's the best diet? What's the best workout? The best one is one that you can stick to, because even if you're on what science says is the best one, if it's really hard for you and you can't maintain it for any length of time, then it fails. It doesn't matter how good it is, it has failed you. And so even if you're on a mediocre plan, but you like it and you can stick to it and it works, then you have successfully completed your goal. And so that means that that plan may have been better for you than what would be the best quote unquote plan. So the best plan is one that you will stick to, one that you will continue to do, one that you can hang in there with. If I had food that was already prepared, I would eat it. Wouldn't we all? It just makes it so much easier if you can just throw something in the microwave. That's where food prep comes in. Oh. See, we'll talk about it. All right, so I'm going to split this up kind of into the two halves, right? Energy out, energy in. So we're going to talk about energy out. So what does that mean? That means physical activity. That is increasing the amount of calories that you're burning throughout the day. Yeah. They're increasing the amount of calories that you burn throughout the day, right? So physical activity is defined as any bodily movement produced by skeletal muscle that requires energy expenditure. So that can mean any number of things. Whatever it is that you like to do, whether it's running, jogging, walking, it could be on the bike or rowing or weightlifting. It could be high intensity interval training. It could be mowing the lawn or raking the yard or vacuuming the house. And this, again, is going to come back to whatever activity that you feel you can stick to the best. You can do 7-minute workouts. I know that Nick and Stupendous and a lot of guys that I work with on the Pandemonium team have been following a short interval-based program on an app on their phones. What's the name of that app, Nick? And every day they've been doing one of these workouts, and you do it's called 7. All right, cool. And so the idea is that you do a 7-minute workout, and then you can go stronger and harder every day, and you continue to do it every day. And as long as you're consistent, you're increasing your calorie output, you're increasing the amount of work that you're doing, you're building up muscle little bit by bit. Whatever you can do that you like to do, that you can do consistently, will help you out. See, that's the thing though, it's something. You're doing more than you were doing before. And paired with a reasonable diet, that can already make a difference. You're not going to be losing weight like crazy, but it's definitely the road towards being healthier. So there are more benefits to exercise than just burning calories as well. So right away when you're doing exercise, no worries, pilot. Right away when you're doing exercise, you're burning calories, right? You go to the gym and you exercise for an hour and you have burned, 700 calories within that hour, and that's great. And so now you're 700 calories ahead of where you were before. But there are other benefits to exercise as well, right? So you're increasing your resting metabolic rate. The more muscle fibers that you have in your body, the more calories you're going to burn throughout the day. Muscle fiber, or should I say muscle cells and muscle tissue requires more energy to maintain metabolism than a fat cell does. And so the better your ratio of muscle cells to fat cells, the more calories you're going to burn. So the more calories you burn, the more calories you burn. It's kind of cool. I know that sounds really weird and redundant, but the more calories you burn in order to gain muscle, then the more calories you're going to burn through your resting metabolic rate, which is swell. For those who don't know what a resting metabolic rate is, if you were to lie down on a table for the entire day and just sit there and breathe and exist, and you measured the amount of calories that you burned that entire time just by your heart pumping and your muscles contracting for you to breathe and whatever, that is your resting metabolic rate, and then that will increase as you gain muscle mass. Oh, no worries, man. So the next point there is a cool one called excess post-exercise oxygen consumption, or EPOC, EPIC. Now I put this little picture down here. You guys can see it. Hey, Jackal, how you doing, bud? EPIC is the amount of oxygen that you consume and the amount of calories that you burn after your exercise is complete. So not only, we use the example of burning 700 calories. I trimmed, I didn't shave. We used the example earlier of burning 700 calories during a workout. But because your body is in kind of an excited state, your blood is pumping, your muscles are tired and rebuilding and reacting to the stress that you've put them under, your body's actually using more energy in the time after your workout is over than it would have been had you not worked out. That's right, I gotta look good for the holidays. Gotta look good for the in-laws. That's the real kicker there. And so what started as a 700 calorie workout may end up being a 900 calorie workout because of the extra calories that you burned afterwards in response to that workout. So that's exercise post-oxygen, excess post-exercise oxygen consumption epic. Hey Jason, how you doing, buddy? Let's see, what was I gonna say? Okay, so that's another reason why exercise is good. Another one, improving body composition. So a lot of people are really interested in looking better. Obviously, exercise is going to take you there. If we lose fat and we gain muscle, your body starts to look a little bit better, which is nice. Improved state of mind. So actually, hey Plot, how you doing? So actually, there is a lot of good research that shows that a regular exercise routine is really beneficial for mental health. So exercise, it releases serotonin, it releases dopamine, and people who struggle with depression, with anxiety, have found that they feel at least marginally better after having exercised, and they will rate themselves as doing better over the course of a long period of time if they're exercising at regular intervals within that period of time. So if you struggle with any sort of mental illness to some capacity, exercise could be a way to help yourself out beyond any sort of pharmacological intervention. An improved hormonal response to carbohydrates. So this one is also really cool. So I know that a lot of people who have not had the chance to exercise over a period of time, they may gain some weight, and they may even find themselves in what's called a pre-diabetic state. And what that means is they've increased what's called their insulin resistance. So when you consume carbs, sugar or grains or what have you, your body releases insulin into the blood, which is this really great hormone that helps you build muscle. But what happens is if you find yourself eating carbs all the time, your body doesn't respond to that insulin as well as it did before. And so you have to release more insulin and more insulin, more insulin. And you don't want to have too much of it in you too often, because it does more than just build muscle. It stores fat. It does all these things beyond building muscle that end up being negative if you have it in your body for too long. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later when we're talking about intermittent fasting. So what exercise can do is it can actually lead to you having a better insulin response to the food that you eat. So if you have a certain amount of carbs and you release the right amount of insulin, and then your body treats that glucose, that sugar that you consume, much more efficiently than it would have otherwise. And so it can help people who are in that pre-diabetic state hopefully come back more towards a much more normal blood sugar state. And there's many more, I guess, benefits to exercise as well, and I don't want to go into all of them because there are so many. So if I'm going to go back to this. If there's anything here that you see that you like, that you want to try, I highly recommend you find something activity-wise that you like to do that uses energy. I know we all like playing games, we all like watching TV, but unfortunately those don't fit this profile. Those don't get the benefits that we just talked about before. So I encourage you to find something that you enjoy doing that does burn energy, so you can kind of point the scale in your favor, right? So we're going to switch gears here. We're going to talk about energy in instead of energy out. So we're talking about food here, and at its core, energy in is all about calories. Now we're going to talk about macros in a little while, but calories really are one of the most important things when it comes to weight loss. Macros are pretty important. Counting your carbs, proteins, and fats are really important if you're looking to gain muscle and body build. But when it comes to weight loss, calories really are the kicker. So I bring up Professor Twinkie here because in 2010, a Kansas State University professor went on what he called a Twinkie diet, where he only ate Twinkies and Oreos and Doritos, but he was counting his calories. He never ate more than the directed 2,000 calories per day. And I think he actually went into a calorie deficit. I think he ate like 1,700 calories a day. And over the course of 2 months, the guy lost weight because he was in a calorie deficit. Even though he was eating all these crappy foods, his total energy consumption was less than it was before, and that led to his weight loss. Now, I wouldn't recommend doing this. This is not the diet that I'm coming at you with my professional opinion. But this is just to reinforce the idea that weight loss is highly, highly tied to calorie restriction. Even as little as 300 to 400 calories per day cutting back can make a difference in the long run. And this is amplified greatly if you are exercising in the meantime. His health was not awesome. No, he had some cholesterol issues. And one of the big issues, RM, was that he lost a really great deal of muscle mass. When you're not counting your macros correctly, your body tends to get what it needs from the muscles. If it's not getting what it needs from your fat, it'll get it from the muscles. And so he did lose plenty of muscle mass in that time. But this was just an example to show that that it really comes down to calories. But like I said, don't do the Twinkie diet. I just wanted to give that as a quick example. All right, so what are things you can start doing today that will help you with this goal, right? We want to decrease the amount of calories that we're taking in, but I know a lot of people struggle with kind of their standard diet and don't know where to start. So something you can do today. Number one, and this is always super easy to start off with, is that you can increase the amount of water you're drinking. And I know a lot of people kind of pound this into you when you're young, and you hear this all the time, but I assure you that drinking an increased amount of water, for anywhere from a half gallon to a full gallon of water a day. You don't have to drink a full gallon. That's a lot. But I know a lot of people that do drink a gallon a day, and it does a couple of things. Number one, when you are dehydrated, if you are in a dehydrated state or you generally drink less water than you should, your body responds by feeling hungry before it will feel thirsty. And so a lot of times you'll end up snacking instead of drinking water when really all you needed to do was drink water. And so that could be a couple hundred calories that you really don't need to be getting when you could just be drinking water, and you would feel just as full and just as complete with the water as you would have with the snack. Number two is that water takes up physical space, right? So your stomach is only, this big or however big it is. And a really, really cool tip that I've heard before is try drinking like a big old glass of water before you start eating, because automatically that symbols to your stomach like, okay, there's something in there, it's taking up space, and now I can start thinking about telling my brain that I'm on the road towards full. And so starting your meal with a big glass of water can actually decrease the amount of food that you're eating before you feel like you need to stop, which is kind of fun. Decline that. So number three, and this one is more important if you are interested in exercising to a greater degree, but if you're exercising a lot, increasing the amount of water will help you thermoregulate during that exercise. Obviously you're sweating a lot, but you want to be sweating and you want to replace all that water that you're losing during exercise, so make sure you're drinking plenty of water. This was one that my wife brought up, and I looked into it, and it's definitely, this is the real deal, but slow your eating by half. So I'm really bad at this. I eat really, really fast, and you get to the point where you're eating so fast that you kind of outrun your body's full reaction. And so when your stomach is full, your stomach also releases hormones that can then travel to your brain and tell your brain, like, okay, I'm full, no more food. But that takes time. It takes like 10 or 15 minutes for everything to take place. And so one tip that I can give you is to take your dinner, take your normal serving size, and then cut it in half and set it aside. Set aside one half of your meal. Eat the first half, sit, enjoy it. And I'm not saying do that whole take a bite and chew it 30 times and then take the next bite, but enjoy the first half of your meal at the normal speed, and then wait a minute, or wait 5 minutes, or wait 10 minutes, and then see how hungry you are when you get to that second half. And you might find that the second half goes a lot slower and may not even go the entire way when you compare it to the first half. And finally, this one is based on a little bit more recent research, but increasing the amount of protein that you intake. And I'm not just talking about protein shakes, but increasing the amount of meats that you have, increasing the amount of beans or whatever your protein source is. Bump it, make it higher. There have been lots of studies that show that people who are eating high amounts of protein will feel more full with the amount of food that they're eating. So if a greater portion of their food is made of protein versus carbs, like spaghetti, for example, if you have a higher incidence of meat than carb, then you're going to feel more full from that meal, and you may go longer without eating, or you may eat less before you decide that you want to stop. Number two is that protein has what's called a higher thermic effect of food. Now this one's kind of fancy, but protein and carbs and fats, they all require energy to be broken down. It takes energy for your body to take these large, big molecules and turn them into something usable for your body. And protein is the hardest. It is really hard for your body to take a big old protein and break it down into the amino acids that are required to do any of the functions that you need them to be used for in the body. And so because it requires this energy, you're actually expending more energy eating protein than you are carbs, which is really cool, right? So the idea that you're actually burning calories to eat your calories is kind of fun. So the higher the thermic effect of your food, then the lower net increase in energy you're intaking. Does that make sense? I know it's kind of an abstract idea, but that's why protein is so cool. We're kind of buzzing through this one. Not a lot of people are asking a lot of questions. Guys, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. I'd love to answer those for you. And then finally, if you're lifting weights, if you're exercising a lot, then your muscles are going to need something to build off of. And I know a lot of people know this one. This is just kind of a covered my bases here. Yeah, no worries, Nick. But if you're exercising more often, you got to give your muscles the building blocks they need to build back up. And so having an increased protein intake is very, very helpful. And so kind of the last thing, today's a little bit shorter, I guess. Mostly because people aren't asking any questions like they were last time. I wanted to go over some popular diet plans. So I've heard people asking about many of these in many situations, not just on the Mixer Fit Discord, but like people ask me about these privately. We talk about them at work all the time. These three are kind of what I would consider the most popular kind of fad. I don't even want to call them fad diets, but like the most popular diets right now for people who are interested in losing weight. Keto. So first one is intermittent fasting, and we're going to talk about each one of these individually in a second. First one's intermittent fasting. The second one is called IIFYM, and that's an acronym for If It Fits Your Macros. And again, I'll talk about that in just a moment. And then finally, and I'm sure you guys have heard of this one before, and that's keto or ketogenic diet. And that's where you focus on fats instead of on carbs. And again, one really important piece of this, guys, I'm not going to tell you which one of these is best. I'm not going to tell you which one I think is scientifically the most effective. The best one of these is the one that you can stick to the most effectively, because if you say keto burns more calories than anything else, if you can't stick to keto, which a lot of people can't, then it's not good. Then it doesn't work for you, and then that means it was useless. So we want the best diet for you is the one that you can stick to for a reasonable period of time until you can reach your goals, right? So what's intermittent fasting? So intermittent fasting is when you purposefully take pretty large chunks of time and you do not consume any calories during those periods. Now, popular splits include 16-8, and what that means is I spend 16 hours fasting every day, and then I only eat during 8 hours of the day. So this is one that I follow right now just for giggles, but that means that I'm only consuming calories between the hours of 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. And if it's between 6 p.m. and then around overnight to 10 a.m., there's nothing. You don't take snacks, you don't take drinks. I mean, you can drink water, but you don't drink soda, you don't drink anything artificially flavored. It is water or black coffee or black tea, I think is another, or unsweetened tea. I think those are the three things you can have during the 16-hour fast. I would start there if this is something that you are interested in trying. People also do a 20-hour to 4-hour split. That one is significantly more challenging. 4 extra hours in a fasted state can be pretty rough. You're only consuming calories between 5 and 9 p.m. Pilot, that's probably not great, unless you've been practicing for a long time. Hey, Yer, how you doing, bud? So, between 5 a.m. and 9 p.m. There you go. Hey, Yer, thanks for that follow, dude. And then another method that people have found to be successful is to completely fast for 24 hours one time a week, right? So I'm gonna eat like normal Monday through Saturday, and then every Sunday I'm going to not consume anything. I'm going to get up. I'm not going to eat anything all day. I'm going to go to bed. I'm not going to eat anything until Monday morning. I can't tell you which one is most effective, but I can tell you for beginners, the 16-8 split is usually the easiest to start. Man, Pilot, you should eat more, unless you're trying to lose weight. Looks like Pilot's following the 20-4 split. So intermittent fasting is good for a couple of things, right? It's good for, or I should say it's good for a couple of reasons, right? We're doing this for losing weight, but it's good for a couple of reasons. Number one is that if you limit the amount of time that you're able to eat, you're limiting the amount of time where you might, you're up for 18 hours a day, there you go. So you're spending 6 of those fasted hours already asleep, so that's good. That means you only have to spend 10 hours during your day fasting, which is nice. So this is good because you're decreasing the amount of time that you're allowed to eat, and I've found that this is really good for like snacking issues. So if I'm towards the end of my stream, which is 11 or 12 at night, it's really easy for me to walk down to the fridge and be like, man, I'm super hungry, and have like an ice cream or a snack or something. But if I'm not in my window from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., then I'm not consuming anything, and so that may be a couple hundred calories that I'm not consuming that I would have otherwise. So right there, decreasing the amount of calories that I'm intaking, which is great. Number 2 is what's called an improved, or eggnog ice cream, correct. An improved hormonal profile. So remember we talked about insulin a little earlier, and insulin is good for building muscle. Well, the issue that people run into is it's good for building muscle when you are exercising regularly. But if you're not exercising regularly and you're just, if you're just eating and then snacking and then eating, the insulin in your blood likes to build something else. It loves to build fat. And so what happens is if I'm spending 16 hours out of my day every day without eating, then that's a ton of hours where there's no insulin in my body. And so any calories that I'm digesting will not be put into fat. And my body's going to be spending more time pulling resources from my body instead of pulling resources from the food that I'm snacking from. So another great thing right there, your amount of insulin, the amount of time that your body has insulin in the blood is decreased, which is cool. And number 3, and this one's actually pretty like nitty-gritty biochemistry here, but I definitely wanted to mention it because it's kind of cool. The way that your genes are expressed has been shown to change with intermittent fasting. And what I mean when I say that is there are certain proteins in your body that are only made in certain times. And they have found that when you are following an intermittent fasting plan, the expression of a particular gene that makes a protein called an uncoupling protein actually increases. So you make more of this protein. And what it does is it pokes holes in your mitochondria. And everyone knows mitochondria, right? They're the powerhouse of the cell. But what happens when you poke holes in it is that it makes it less efficient. Yeah, it's kind of like that. And so when you make your mitochondria less efficient, you're not changing the amount of energy that you need to survive. You're just making it so that they can't make that same amount of energy with an equal amount of calories, with an equal amount of sugar or fat or whatever it is they're pulling their energy from. And so you're actually increasing the amount of energy that it requires for you to create the calories that you need to survive. So you're actually making your body use more resources, which is really kind of cool. This has only been shown in really one study, but it was pretty definitive when they did show it. So I like to say it. I don't want to be like, if you go take a genetic study right now, you'll find this, but it's kind of cool that this has been shown. No worries, RM. I'll talk to you soon, but yeah, I'll post it on YouTube. So anyway, that is why intermittent fasting is super cool. Does anyone have any questions about IF before we move on? All right. Well, if you do, we'll get there. Okay, so the second one is called IIFYM, or If It Fits Your Macros. Another name for this is flexible dieting. But what this means is that as a bodybuilder or performance-based athlete or someone who's losing weight, you want to determine exactly what percentage of your calories are coming from each particular macronutrient. Now, when I say macronutrient, I'm talking specifically about carbohydrates, protein, and fat. And so if you look over here, we have these pie charts that are created. So if you're in a weight loss split, you want 40% of your calories to come from protein you want 30% to come from fat, and you want 30% to come from carbs. This chart here was actually, there was only this chart here, but this chart was made for the typical bodybuilding split. So you can see that if you're following the bodybuilding split, it's 40-40-20. So a 2,500 calorie diet would look like 1,000, 1,500 calories each from carbs, protein, and fat. And then it translates to number of grams. And so this is good for people who have a very organized mind. You know, I want to weigh out everything that I've been eating. I want to make sure that I'm eating exactly this many grams of protein, this many grams of carbs, and this many grams of fat. A lot of people really like the stability and knowing exactly what food they need to eat in order to complete this goal. I apologize that the graph does not match the chart. I wish it did. I wish it followed this weight loss one, but the only one they had written out was for the bodybuilding split. So if it was 30-30-40 here, it would be 1,000 and then probably like 750 and 750, right? So 1,000 of protein, 1,000 calories of protein, and then 750 calories each of carbs and of fat. And then that would translate to grams. And if anyone needed specific numbers for that, we could talk about that at a different time. But anyway, this is also pretty helpful in social situations because you can make a budget for how many macros you have. So if I know I'm going out to dinner with my friends tomorrow night and I know I need, you know, X number of grams of carbs and protein and fat, then I can adjust what I'm eating for breakfast and for lunch so that I have plenty of carbs and proteins and fats budgeted for my evening, because this diet allows for that kind of flexibility. As long as you're getting this many carbs, this many proteins, and this many fats, it's up to you. It's entirely up to you. It's not strict at all. That's why they call it flexible dieting, and they've actually shown this to be pretty successful in people who are bodybuilding. Even compared to really strict diets that bodybuilders follow, flexible diets have been shown to be really successful, mostly because they really help with people who have issues with binging. So if I am following a really strict diet, I might find myself in a position where I'm really craving, ice cream. I'm really craving a donut or something, and it doesn't fit my really strict diet. But if I'm in the flexible dieting, maybe I can go have that one donut, because then I can just make up for it a little bit later. And so then I'm less likely to go eat 10 donuts because I was craving them so badly. So anyway, that's if it fits your macros. Like I said, it requires a kind of a fairly organized mind. It requires you to weigh out things that you're eating and understand the math behind where your calories are coming from. And so it takes a little bit of homework, and you have to know how much macros are in every piece of food. Hey, Fighter, thank you for that follow, man. Much appreciated. Fighter Bob 007. What's up, man? So anyway, that's if it fits your macros. And then finally, we're coming towards the end here, is keto. So this is a ketogenic diet. This is one that I think is probably the most popular one on the internet right now. That's how Thai hats are made? Oh, well, interesting. But a ketogenic diet is one that is kind of a complete metabolic shift. So your body really likes using sugar for energy. It uses glucose first before anything else in almost every situation, whether it's running or lifting weights or your brain thinking or your liver or your heart. So much of your body uses sugar first because it's been trained to do that since forever. And so with a ketogenic diet, you have to completely flip it on its head. You have to retrain your body on where it gets its energy from sugars, aka carbs, carbohydrates, to fats. And so you can see here I wrote that 75% of your calories need to come from fats, whereas 20% come from protein and only 5% come from carbs. This is not a lot of carbs. So keto has been shown to be very successful. People have shown really great enhancements. Really great enhancements in body composition. If you make your main source of energy fat, then your body's going to start pulling fat from your own body when it needs more food, and so you will start losing fat pretty quickly because your body's pulling from its own stores. It's kind of fun. But there's definitely another side to this coin. Keto can be very successful. It has been shown to work very, very well, but it requires a major change in lifestyle. Anything that you probably used for a snack in the past is probably carb related, and you can't use that anymore. You have to focus all of your efforts on making sure that you're getting enough fat throughout the day. Remember, 75% of your calories, that's 1,500 calories a day on a 2,000 calorie diet. So it may be even more if you're eating more than that in a day. But 75% of your calories have to come from fat, and this could be oils or butter or dressings or fish fat or avocados or what have you. But you have to really change the way that you go about planning your meals and cooking your food and snacking, and everything is different. And it requires a lot more time, and sometimes it's a little bit more expensive, and just your whole lifestyle shifts, and so you have to be ready for that. Another point you see on there is something called the keto flu. And what the keto flu is, and this happens to almost everyone who goes into keto, is this weird kind of hazy sickness that everyone goes through when they're shifting when they're shifting between these two metabolic processes. So like I said, your brain is very focused on using glucose. Your brain uses more glucose than almost any other part of your body. But now you're teaching your brain to use ketones or fats instead of sugar. And for a while, for 3 or 4 days, your brain can be starved for sugar. It's just like, please give me some glucose, give me sugar, let me do what I want to do. And so it's going to be really, really straining, really pushing, and we're feeling really cloudy and nasty. And so you have to kind of get over this hump. Usually it takes place within about a week. Sometimes quicker, sometimes longer. And this turns a lot of people away. They try and they try and they try to get through it, but they just can't. And so I would be definitely aware that this is something that takes place for people who are looking to get into this state of ketogenesis. So be aware of that. And then finally, and this one I actually just learned about very recently, is to make sure you're getting your electrolytes, your sodiums, your potassiums, your salts in general. And why this is, and this was fun for me. Remember when I said that when you consume carbs, your body releases insulin in response? One of the other things that insulin does is it tells your kidneys to hold on to salt. I can't remember the exact mechanism of why your insulin tells your kidneys to hold on to salt, but it plays a very important role in your body maintaining its electrolyte levels. But see, now we're only eating 5% of our calories from carbs, and so we're not stimulating that insulin release very often, almost at all. And so now you've got no insulin telling your body where to put its salt, and so your kidneys will just say, we don't need it, we're good, and it'll flush right out. You don't need it anymore, so it's gone. And so one very important factor for people that are trying to maintain ketosis is to make sure that you're getting your salts, getting your sodium, getting your potassium and such. One tip I've heard, and this one was kind of interesting, is to try just drinking a cup or so of chicken broth every day. Chicken broth has a ton of salt in it, and so just getting that extra little stem of salt, and there's actually oil in the chicken broth as well, is really good for you. So anyway, that's ketosis. Anyway, that is kind of the end of it. I know that we kind of sped through. Not a lot of people had big questions this time. But that was kind of all I wanted to talk about. So remember, we want to make sure that we maintain that energy in, energy out equation, right? We want to outweigh our energy in with our energy out. We want to be doing more activity and burning more calories than we are consuming. And that's really the main goal of, a lot of these three diets. With intermittent fasting, you're actually decreasing the amount of food that you're probably eating, since you're only eating during a small window. And if it fits your macros, you're probably eating less calories than you were before, because you're counting everything and you're not snacking randomly, and it's great. And with keto, you're decreasing the amount of carbs that you're eating, and you're decreasing the amount of bad calories that you're eating. So you're decreasing your energy in, which is good. So it's cool that all these diets, they work great, but in the end, their main reason for being successful is that you're decreasing the amount of calories that you're intaking, which is cool. Oh, hey Native, what's up, dude? So anyway, like I said, that's kind of it. Do we have any other questions before we move on? I was going to play a little bit of Siege tonight, but this was kind of the first thing that I wanted to do before I did that. Let's see, here we go. Cool. All right, well let's freaking do it then, huh? Well, thank you, everyone. I'm gonna go on BRB for just a second then and get everything set up. This was fun. I hope you guys felt like it was informative. I will post the VOD on